The Ridgemont Motel had seen better decades. Built in 1987, painted that sickly beige, that time had faded to something between ash and bone. The place housed the kind of people society forgot. Truckers passing through, families in transition, the temporarily homeless, the permanently hopeless. Stone had chosen it specifically for that reason. It was the kind of place where nobody asked questions, and nobody remembered faces. Now, sitting in the cramped office of room 112, he understood why Tommy's mother, Sarah Reeves, had chosen it too. She was thin in the way sickness makes people thin, not elegant, but hollowed out. Cancer had taken most of her hair and all of her color. She sat on the edge of the bed, wrapped in a blanket that had once been white, watching Stone with eyes that had learned to expect disappointment but couldn't quite stop hoping. "Tommy said you'd help us," she whispered. Not a question, a desperate wish. "Tommy's a smart kid," Stone said. He stood by the window, positioned so he could see the parking lot. Old habits. "How long have you known about Caldwell?" Sarah's face went pale. She pulled the blanket tighter. "I didn't know his name until Tommy told you. But there was a man. He came asking questions about the motorcycle crew that stays here sometimes. He wanted to know if anyone, old, anyone with your description." Stone nodded. Caldwell was thorough, smart, dangerous. "How long can you stay in this room?" "Until the end of next week. We have enough money for 6 more nights." Sarah's voice cracked. "After that, I don't know. I've been working remotely as a medical transcriber, but the medication costs are—" She stopped, collecting herself. "I'm sorry. You don't need to hear this." "How much?" Stone asked. "Excuse me. How much to keep you here? Room, food, medication, how much?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Thousands, and you're a stranger." "I can't ask." "You didn't ask," Stone interrupted. "Your son did. That's different." He pulled out his wallet, extracted a card. "This is a debit card. It's got 20 grand on it. Use it for whatever you need. Room, medicine, food, everything." Sarah stared at the card like it might transform into something dangerous. "I can't take this." "You're not taking it," Stone said. "Your son just saved my life. That's worth more than money." He placed the card on the nightstand. "And Sarah, lock your door. Don't let anyone in. There's going to be some activity around here in the next few days. Men coming and going. Don't be afraid of them. They're with me." By nightfall they came. Reaper rolled in first on an Indian chief bobber. Leather so black it looked like it absorbed light. Behind him came a convoy. 12 bikes, all colors, all angles, all dangerous. They pulled into the Ridgemont lot like ghosts taking solid form, the sound of their engines making windows rattle. Stone stood in the parking lot watching them arrive. These were his brothers, had been for 15 years before he'd stepped away. The Iron Promise MC, not a gang, though law enforcement called them that. A club, a family. A standing army of men who believed that loyalty meant everything and rules meant nothing. Reaper got off his bike slow, methodical. He was 62 with a grey beard down to his chest and eyes that had seen combat in 3 different wars. He walked up to Stone and embraced him, the kind of hug that said, "I've missed you and I'm angry you left and it doesn't matter because you're back now." "Caldwell?" Reaper asked. "Trying to take me off the road," Stone confirmed. "Rigged my bike. Would have worked if a kid hadn't warned me." Reaper nodded. He turned to the crew, who were parking their bikes in a loose semicircle around the motel. 12 of the hardest men Stone knew. Ghost, Diesel, Preacher. Kira, the only woman in the crew and the most dangerous of all. She rode a Heritage Softail and had a 357 that never left her hip. "Listen up," Reaper called out. "Caldwell's made a play. He's here in Ridgemont. He's escalating, which means he's either desperate or confident. Either way, he's made a mistake." Reaper pointed at Stone. "Because now he's got a full crew watching his every move." A cheer went up. Not loud, but deep, the sound of men who understood what was happening and welcomed it. "What's the play?" Ghost asked. Ghost was built like a truck and spoke like a poet. Dangerous combination. "We find him," Stone said, "before he finds me again, and we make sure he understands that this ends now." Diesel, a massive man with a shaved head and Norse tattoos covering his entire chest, stepped forward. "What about the kid? The one who warned you?" Stone glanced back at room 112, where Tommy was watching from behind the curtain, eyes wide as saucers. "The kid is under protection," Stone said, "and his mother. Anyone comes near that room, anyone asks questions, anyone even looks wrong at that kid, they're making a problem for all of us." Reaper smiled. It was a smile that had made hardened criminals reconsider their life choices. "I like it," Reaper said. "Stone's getting soft in his old age, protecting kids. Next thing you know, he'll be adopting them." Stone didn't smile, but something in his chest loosened. He'd forgotten what this felt like, belonging to something bigger than his own ghosts. The iron promise had saved him once, years ago, when he was nothing but rage and regret. He'd walked away thinking he could face the darkness alone. He'd been wrong. If this story is hitting you hard right now, smash that like button. The best is coming. "Spread out," Stone commanded, slipping into a role that had once been second nature. "Two-man teams, cover the roads leading out of town. 2 at the motel, rotate shifts. No one sleeps more than 4 hours. Caldwell's here, he's close, and he's going to make a mistake." The crew moved with the precision of men who'd trained together for years. Within 30 minutes, the iron promise had transformed Ridgemont into hostile territory. Stone stood alone in the parking lot, watching the sun set behind the motel. Somewhere out there, Caldwell was waiting, planning, hoping for another opportunity. He was going to get one, but not the way he expected. Tommy couldn't stop talking. Stone sat in room 112 the next morning, drinking terrible coffee that Sarah had somehow made worse, while the boy recounted every detail of the previous night with the precision of a crime scene investigator. "He wore a leather jacket," Tommy said, pacing the small room like a prosecutor. "The back had some kind of patch, but it was dark, so I couldn't see it, and he had a phone. Really nice one, silver. He kept checking it like he was waiting for someone to call." "Did he say anything else?" Stone asked. "Anything about where he was staying?" "He mentioned the highway diner," Tommy said. "He told someone on the phone to meet him there. At the diner, Tuesday morning, he said. We finish this then." Stone leaned back in the chair. Tuesday was 2 days away. Caldwell was moving forward with a plan. Whatever he had in mind, it was escalating. "Tommy, I need you to listen to me," Stone said. "What you did last night, warning me, that was brave. That was the kind of thing that matters. But it also means you might be in danger now. Caldwell might figure out that you talked to me." Tommy nodded solemnly. "I know. That's why I wanted to tell you everything. So you could stop him before he stops me." The kid's logic was brutal and perfect. "Your mom's medication came this morning," Stone continued. "It's in the bathroom. You make sure she takes it on time. Every single time. You understand?" "Are you going to kill him?" Tommy asked. Stone didn't answer immediately. He looked at this small boy who'd already seen too much of the world's darkness and decided to meet it head-on. "I'm going to stop him," Stone finally said. "That's all that matters." "But what if—" "No what-ifs," Stone interrupted gently. "You did your part. Now let me do mine. Your job is to take care of your mom. Can you do that?" Tommy nodded, but his eyes were older than they should have been. This was a kid who'd already learned that the world wasn't safe, that promises were fragile, that grown-ups couldn't always protect you. Stone stood up and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. I'm going to make you a promise, Tommy. The same promise your father made to the people around him. I'm going to be here. For you and your mum. No matter what happens with Caldwell, that doesn't change. You've got family now, you've got the iron promise. It's now 3:47 a.m. in Ridgemont, and Stone is about to make a decision that will change everything. Drop a comment below. Do you think he should confront Caldwell directly or set a trap? The Ridgemont Highway Diner was exactly what Stone expected. Sticky floors, coffee that had been sitting since yesterday, waitresses with tired eyes and bigger hearts. He sat in a back booth, a clear sightline to the front door and the kitchen exits. Rookie mistake for Caldwell to pick a place like this. Too many variables, too many ways to get cornered. Reaper was already in position, disguised as a trucker by the counter. Diesel and Ghost occupied the parking lot in separate vehicles. Kira had a sniper angle from the building across the street, though Stone hoped it wouldn't come to that. This needed to end clean. Final. No echoes. Caldwell arrived at 9:47 a.m., exactly as Tommy had predicted. He was smaller than Stone remembered, scar down his left cheek, exactly as described. Tattoos coiling up his neck like snakes. He carried himself with the careful aggression of a man who'd spent time in prison and come out meaner than he went in. With him came two other men, muscle, but not quality. Desperation money, not cartel money. Caldwell scanned the diner. His eyes passed over Reaper without recognition. His jaw tightened when he saw Stone sitting alone in the back booth. He wasn't alone anymore. Caldwell said something to his men, and they approached. Stone didn't move, didn't reach for anything, just sat there, coffee cup in hand, waiting. "Took you long enough to find me," Stone said as they arrived at the table. Caldwell's smile was all teeth. "Been saving you for something special. You killed my brother, Stone. You took him from me. The least I could do was return the favor." "Your brother was collateral," Stone said flatly. "He was in a situation he shouldn't have been in. I didn't have a choice." "Everyone has a choice," Caldwell spat. "You chose wrong, and now you're gonna pay." Stone set down his coffee cup. Slow, deliberate. "Here's the thing about revenge, Caldwell. It only works if I'm standing alone. It only works if I'm vulnerable." Stone gestured at the diner, where Reaper had shifted position, where Ghost was visible through the window, where the entire morning had become a carefully orchestrated symphony of threat. "But I'm not alone. I haven't been for a long time. The Iron Promise doesn't forget brothers, and they don't let brothers die cheap." Caldwell's face went white. "You're in our town now," Stone continued. "You tried to kill me. You threatened my people. That's 3 mistakes in 1 week." Stone leaned forward. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to walk out of this diner, you're going to get in your car, and you're going to drive. You're going to drive until you can't see Ridgemont in your mirror, and you're never coming back." "Or what?" Caldwell's hand was moving toward his waist. Reaper was there before anyone saw it happen. One moment he was at the counter, the next he was pressing the barrel of a .45 into Caldwell's ribs. The motion was so smooth, so practiced, that the other diner patrons didn't even notice. They just kept eating their eggs. "Or you die in a diner on a Tuesday morning," Reaper said quietly. "And nobody remembers your name." Caldwell's men took a step back. They were tough, but they weren't stupid. 2-on-1 they might have had a chance. But this wasn't 2-on-1. This was one man with a gun and an entire motorcycle club watching from every angle. "We're leaving," Caldwell said through gritted teeth. "Good choice," Stone said. "Don't make me regret it." Caldwell turned and walked out, his men following. Within minutes, the diner had returned to normal. Eggs and coffee and the quiet hum of morning traffic, as if a man's death, metaphorical or otherwise, hadn't just been averted in booth number 7. Reaper sat down across from Stone and signaled the waitress for coffee. "That went better than expected," Reaper said. "It's not over," Stone replied. "Men like Caldwell don't accept humiliation. He'll be back." Then we'll be ready, Reaper said simply. That's what family does. 2 weeks passed without incident. Caldwell didn't come back to Ridgemont. The crew eventually thinned out, though Stone kept Reaper and Ghost as permanent residents, working shifts at the motel, keeping watch. Sarah's health had stabilized. The medication Stone had provided was working. She was still weak, still fighting, but the desperate edge had softened into something more manageable. Tommy thrived. The kid had become a fixture in the motel office, following Stone and the crew around like a shadow. He was learning to work on bikes, learning the rules of the club, learning what it meant to be part of something larger than himself. "You ever think about what happens when you're healed?" Tommy asked Stone one afternoon. They were sitting on the steps of the motel, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of amber and crimson. "What do you mean?" Stone asked. "My mom. Her doctor said the treatments are working better than expected. She might be okay. And the doctors said she might even be able to work again, full time." Tommy paused. "So what happens when we can afford to leave? Do you leave too?" Stone was quiet for a long moment. He'd asked himself this question every single day since arriving in Ridgemont. He'd come to this town expecting to disappear. Instead, he'd found something he'd lost years ago, a reason to stay. "I'm not leaving," Stone said finally. "This is home now." "Really?" Tommy's voice was small with hope. "Really? Your mom too? We're taking care of each other now. That's what the Iron Promise does. We're family." Tommy leaned against Stone's shoulder, and Stone put his arm around the kid's shoulders. They sat there as the sun completed its descent. Two broken people who'd somehow found their way toward healing. The call came at 2:34 a.m. Reaper's voice was tight on the other end of the phone. "We've got a situation. You need to come to the garage." Stone was out the door in seconds, leaving a note for Ghost. The Iron Promise's headquarters was 15 minutes away, an old warehouse they'd converted into a clubhouse 3 years prior. By the time Stone arrived, Reaper and Kira were already there, along with 3 other crew members. And sitting at the table, battered and bleeding, was a woman Stone hadn't seen in 11 years. "Marie," he breathed. She looked up, and her face went through a series of emotions. Surprise, fear, then something that might have been relief. "Stone, I didn't know if you'd still be in the country." Marie had been Stone's old lady before he'd walked away from the club. She'd left him because she couldn't compete with his ghosts. The Iron Promise hadn't heard from her in over a decade. "What happened?" Stone asked, kneeling beside her. "Caldwell," Kira said grimly. "She came to the clubhouse 20 minutes ago asking for you. She's been running from him for weeks, says he thinks she knows where you are." Marie grabbed Stone's hand. "He's escalating. He found out about Tommy, about the kid in the motel. He thinks he can use the kid to get to you. He's been making calls, Stone, big calls. He's bringing in outside muscle." Stone's blood went cold. "Where is he now?" "Heading to Ridgemont," Marie said. "He'll be there within the hour." The call came through the encrypted line at 4:16 a.m. "They're rolling," Ghost's voice crackled. "Caldwell's got muscle, real muscle. I count 12 vehicles heading this direction on Route 9, ETA 7 minutes. Stone was already moving before Ghost finished the sentence. He'd been awake since Marie's arrival at the clubhouse, pacing the floor like a caged predator, knowing that the final confrontation was inevitable. Caldwell was a man with nothing left to lose, and men like that were always the most dangerous. He grabbed his phone and made the call that would change everything. "Reaper, code red, full mobilization, Ridgemont now." The response was instant. Reaper understood what code red meant. It wasn't just a threat to one man, it was a threat to the club's family. It was a call that meant every patch holder within a 100-mile radius would drop whatever they were doing and ride toward the danger. Within 5 minutes, Stone's phone was exploding with confirmations. On the way, diesel already rolling. Kira bringing the Sacramento chapter, 30 minutes out. Prophet San Francisco chapter mobilizing. Will be there in 40. Reaper, now on the road. The Iron Promise didn't have a formal military structure, but they moved like one. There was a network, decades of alliances, chapters in every major city, a communication system that would make the Pentagon jealous. When one of their own was threatened, the entire organization responded with the precision of an army mobilizing for war. Stone moved through the clubhouse like a ghost, gathering what he needed: a loaded .45 in an ankle holster, a knife with a 7-inch blade, the kind of tools that belonged to a man who'd learned long ago that words sometimes weren't enough. Marie appeared in the doorway, already dressed, her face set in the hard mask of someone who'd spent years around motorcycle clubs and understood exactly what was about to happen. "You're staying here," Stone said without looking at her. "Like hell," Marie replied. "I brought this down on you. I'm not hiding while you clean it up." "Marie?" "No," she interrupted. "I've been running from Caldwell for 3 weeks. I've been looking over my shoulder, jumping at shadows, wondering if today was the day he'd find me and drag me into whatever sick revenge fantasy he's been planning." She moved closer, her jaw tight. "I'm done running. I'm done hiding. And I'm sure as hell not letting that bastard hurt Tommy or Sarah or you. I'm coming with you." Stone wanted to argue. Every instinct screamed at him to keep her safe, away from the violence that was about to unfold. But he also knew Marie. She was tougher than most of the men he rode with. She'd survived the motorcycle life, survived Stone's ghosts, survived years on her own. Keeping her here would only endanger her more. "Fine," he said, "but you stay in the truck. You watch, you observe, but you don't engage unless I give the order. Understood?" Marie nodded, and they moved together toward the parking lot. The night air hit Stone like a slap. It was cold, the kind of desert cold that comes before dawn, when the world hasn't yet warmed to the possibility of a new day. The parking lot of the motel was already transforming into something apocalyptic. Bikes were arriving. The first wave came from the local chapter: Ghost, Diesel, Preacher, and 7 others Stone had ridden with for the past 5 years. They pulled into the lot in a loose formation, their engines announcing their presence to anyone within 5 miles. Each rider killed their engine and immediately began positioning themselves, establishing sight lines, preparing the battlefield. But that was just the beginning. Within 10 minutes, more bikes arrived. These were from the Sacramento chapter, 15 patch holders led by a man named Prophet, who'd fought alongside Stone in 2 different continents during their younger years. They formed a second line, creating a perimeter around the motel. By 4:42 a.m., there were 37 motorcycles in the parking lot. By 4:51 a.m., there were 47. The San Francisco chapter had sent their entire roster. Phoenix chapter had sent 10 riders. Even a small crew from Las Vegas had made the 4-hour drive in record time. Word had spread through the network faster than wildfire. One of their own was under threat. Family was being targeted. The Iron Promise was being disrespected. And the Iron Promise didn't tolerate disrespect. Stone stood at the center of the parking lot, watching his brothers arrive like an invading force. 47 bikers, 47 sets of hands that would spill blood if he asked them to. 47 men who'd made a promise, not just to Stone, but to each other, that they would protect their own. The sound was overwhelming. The rumble of Harleys, the crackle of the morning air, the low murmur of voices as the bikers greeted each other, checked weapons, established positions. Some were armed with pistols. Others carried knives. A few had baseball bats strapped to their bikes, the kind of tools that left no forensic evidence but sent a very clear message. Reaper arrived at 5:01 a.m. on his Indian chief, still wearing his pajama bottoms under his cut, his beard disheveled from the rushed drive. He pulled up next to Stone and killed the engine. "Status," he asked, already moving, already surveying the perimeter with the eye of a man who'd planned tactical operations in 3 different wars. "Caldwell's coming with 12 men," Stone reported. "Professional muscle, cartel connections. Based on what Marie said, they're on Route 9, roughly 5 minutes out." Reaper nodded, absorbing the information. "Okay, here's what we do. We create a presence. We don't start anything, but we make sure they understand that starting something with us would be the last mistake they ever make." He turned to address the assembled crew. "Listen up." The murmuring stopped. 47 bikers turned their attention to Reaper, standing in the center of the parking lot like a general addressing his army. "We've got incoming," Reaper continued, his voice carrying across the lot with the authority of someone who'd led men in actual combat. 12 vehicles, professional muscle. They're looking for a fight." He paused, letting the weight of that statement settle. "We're not going to give them one, not unless they force us to." "What's the play?" Kira asked. She was standing near the motel office, her .357 visible on her hip, her eyes already calculating angles and distances. "The play," Reaper said, "is presence. We surround this motel, we position ourselves so they can see us, understand us, and realize that whatever they're planning is going to cost them more than they're willing to pay. Stone's going to meet them in the parking lot, alone. And they're going to understand that he's not alone." The crew moved with the precision of men who'd trained together for years. Motorcycles were repositioned to create a semicircle around the motel, engines still running, headlights creating a wall of illumination. Riders took positions on the perimeter, some standing with arms crossed, others sitting on their bikes with the patient stillness of predators waiting for prey to make a mistake. Kira positioned herself on the roof of the motel office with a clear sightline to the parking lot entrance. Not with a sniper rifle. Reaper had made it clear they wanted intimidation, not bloodshed, but with the .357 visible, a reminder that if things escalated, they were prepared to escalate harder. Ghost and Diesel positioned themselves near room 112, where Tommy and Sarah were waiting. The 2 massive bikers looked like the gates of hell itself, standing guard over the people who'd become the center of this entire situation. Stone walked through the crowd of his brothers, touching shoulders, making eye contact, acknowledging each man. These were his people, his family, his reason for fighting. By 5:06 a.m., the perimeter was complete. The Iron Promise had transformed the Ridgemont Motel parking lot into a fortress. The first sign of Caldwell's arrival was the dust cloud visible on the highway. 12 vehicles moving in formation, approaching at high speed. They turned off the main road and headed toward the motel, and that's when they saw it. The wall of motorcycles. The sea of leather and steel. The gathering darkness of 47 men who decided that this was the line. This was where they stood. Caldwell's convoy slowed as it approached. The lead vehicle, a black Suburban with tinted windows, came to a stop at the edge of the parking lot. For a long moment, nothing happened. Stone could almost feel the tension inside those vehicles, the moment of realization dawning on Caldwell that he'd massively miscalculated. The driver's side door opened. Caldwell emerged, and Stone had to give the man credit. Despite the fear that must have been flooding through him, he walked forward with something approaching confidence. The scar down his left cheek caught the pre-dawn light. The snake tattoos on his neck seemed to move in the shadows. 11 other men emerged from the vehicles. They were hard men, scarred, tattooed, carrying themselves with the easy violence of professionals. Some wore suits, others wore cargo pants and tactical vests. These weren't street-level operators, these were specialists. Caldwell walked until he was roughly 30 feet from Stone. The gap between them felt like miles. "Impressive," Caldwell said, gesturing at the sea of motorcycles. "You called your friends. That changes things." "It changes nothing," Stone replied. His voice was calm, measured, and backed by the weight of 47 men who would die for him. You came here to hurt a child. You came here to threaten my family. That was your mistake." Caldwell's jaw tightened. "My brother, your brother made his choices," Stone interrupted, "and I made mine. We both have to live with those consequences. The difference is I'm still standing, and your brother isn't, and no amount of revenge, no amount of pain you inflict is going to change that." Caldwell's hand moved toward his waist. Before he could complete the motion, Reaper stepped forward. The movement was smooth, practiced, and terrifying in its efficiency. One moment he was standing 50 feet away. The next, he was directly beside Caldwell with a .45 pressed against the man's ribs. The gesture wasn't hostile. It wasn't even particularly threatening. It was simply a statement of fact. I am faster than you. I am stronger than you. I am better prepared than you. And if you force my hand, you will die. I wouldn't, Reaper said quietly. Not if you want to see tomorrow. Caldwell's entire body went rigid. He could feel it, the barrel of the gun, the absolute certainty of Reaper's willingness to use it, the complete and utter hopelessness of his situation. He'd come to Ridgemont expecting to find a lone gunslinger, isolated and vulnerable. Instead, he'd found a nation. "We're leaving," Caldwell said through gritted teeth. "Good choice," Stone replied. "And Caldwell, if I ever see you within 1,000 miles of Ridgemont again, if I ever hear that you've looked at Tommy wrong or asked questions about Sarah or even thought about coming back, we'll find you, and we'll finish this, permanently." Caldwell turned and walked back to his vehicle, his men following like obedient dogs. They piled into the Suburban and the other vehicles, engines revving, tires spinning on the asphalt as they reversed and turned and headed back toward the highway. Stone watched them go. The convoy disappeared into the pre-dawn darkness, and for a long moment the parking lot was silent except for the rumble of 47 idling motorcycles. Then Reaper lowered his gun and smiled. "That," he said, "went better than expected." The crew erupted, not in violence, but in a strange kind of relief. Bikers stepped off their motorcycles and embraced each other. Ghost and Diesel emerged from room 112, giving Stone a thumbs up. Kira came down from the roof, securing her weapon. The threat had passed, but something fundamental had shifted. The Iron Promise had gathered in full force, and they'd held the line. Caldwell had tested them, had pushed, had tried to force them into a corner, and they'd responded not with violence, but with the simple, unstoppable weight of family united. Stone stood in the center of the parking lot as dawn began to break across the desert horizon. The sky was transforming from black to deep purple to the first hints of orange and gold. A new day was arriving, and for the first time in 30 years, Stone wasn't running toward it alone. 6 months later, the Iron Promise clubhouse was transformed. What had once been an aging warehouse with exposed pipes and concrete floors had become something entirely different. The walls were painted a deep steel gray. The bar, salvaged from a decommissioned casino in Nevada, gleamed with polished wood and brass fixtures. Around the perimeter, photos hung in frames, bikers and their families, crew members at charity events, children playing in the yard outside. And in a place of honor, right above the bar, was a photograph of Tommy Reeves, age 8, standing beside his motorcycle, a custom Harley minibike that the crew had built for him as a gift on his 9th birthday. The kid's smile in that photograph could light up a room. Stone was standing in front of that photo when Marie came up beside him, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She offered him one, and he accepted it gratefully, wrapping his hands around the warmth. "You're thinking about how it all started," Marie said. It wasn't a question. "I'm thinking about how one conversation changed everything," Stone replied. "Kid wakes up one night, sees someone tampering with my bike, and decides to warn a stranger. One small act of courage, and it led to all of this." Marie leaned against the bar, her eyes scanning the clubhouse. The place was full of life, Bikers were working on motorcycles in the attached garage. Children ran through the common areas under the watchful eyes of club members who'd become their uncles and mentors. Sarah was in the office upstairs, working on medical transcription from a desk that had become her permanent workspace. She was healthy now, truly healthy, not just surviving, but thriving. "You're still thinking like a man who's running," Marie said softly, "like you're waiting for it all to fall apart." Stone turned to look at her. After all these years, after the pain and the distance and the rebuilding, Marie still knew him better than anyone, better than he knew himself. "I spent 30 years learning that nothing good lasts," Stone said. "That promises are broken, that people leave, that the people you love get hurt because of the choices you make." "And now?" Marie prompted. "Now I'm learning something different," Stone replied. "Now I'm learning that if you find the right people, if you build something with them that's bigger than your own fear, then the promise holds. The family stays." Marie smiled. It was the kind of smile that held years of pain and healing, and the tentative hope that comes from learning to trust again. At that moment, the door to the clubhouse burst open. Tommy came running through like his hair was on fire, followed closely by a girl about his age, Miranda, the daughter of one of the Phoenix chapter members who'd stayed in Ridgemont after the Caldwell incident. She'd become Tommy's best friend within weeks, and the two had formed an inseparable bond that transcended their age. "Stone! Stone!" Tommy was shouting. "My mom got the job. She got the full-time job at the medical center. She starts next week." Stone felt something warm bloom in his chest. Sarah had been interviewing for a position as the medical center's primary transcriptionist, a job that would give her stability, income, and the ability to build a real life in Ridgemont, a real future. "That's incredible, buddy," Stone said, reaching down to ruffle the kid's hair. "I'm proud of you. And your mom." "She said it's because of you," Tommy said, his eyes serious and earnest. "She said if you hadn't believed in us, if you hadn't stopped to listen that night, she would have died. Not just from the cancer, but from giving up." Stone knelt down until he was eye level with the boy. "Your mom survived because she's strong. You survived because you're brave. I just helped point the way. You two did the work." Tommy threw his arms around Stone in a hug that was completely unself-conscious and absolutely genuine. This was a kid who'd learned to trust again, who'd learned that grown-ups could keep their promises, who'd learned that family meant something real. When Tommy pulled away, he was grinning. "Come on. My mom wants to celebrate. She made a cake." The celebration happened in the back courtyard of the clubhouse. This was a space that had been transformed over the past 6 months. What had once been cracked asphalt was now a gathering place. Picnic tables, a grill, a fire pit for evening gatherings. Fairy lights strung between poles created an atmosphere of warmth and home. Sarah stood at the center of it all, presiding over a table laden with food. The cake was homemade. Sarah had been teaching Tommy to bake, and his first solo effort was a chocolate cake that was slightly lopsided, but absolutely delicious. There were other dishes. Sarah's famous Brazilian rice, beans seasoned to perfection, vegetables from the garden that Ghost and Diesel had started in the yard. The entire crew was there. Reaper was grilling meat with the concentration of a man performing sacred ritual. Kira was playing cards with Tommy and Miranda, letting the kids win with obvious deliberation. Diesel and Ghost were arguing good-naturedly about something incomprehensible while laughing hard enough that tears ran down their faces. Marie worked the tables, making sure everyone had what they needed, settling disputes, mediating between factions. She'd found her place with the Iron Promise again, not as Stone's old lady, though that's what they were becoming, but as a full participant in the club's life. She worked in the office, helped coordinate events, had become a mentor to some of the younger members. Stone stood back and observed it all. This was what he'd been searching for his entire life, without knowing it. Not the bikes or the leather or the reputation, not the promise of violence or the ease of vengeance. What he'd been searching for was this: a place where broken people could gather and heal each other, where promises meant something, where the future could be different from the past because you decided to make it different. Reaper appeared at his elbow, carrying 2 beers. He handed one to Stone. "Beautiful thing, isn't it?" Reaper asked. "What do you mean?" Stone replied. "This. All of this." Reaper gestured at the scene. 6 months ago, you were a ghost. You were a man trying to disappear. And a kid woke up and decided to warn you. And now look at us. Full clubhouse. Sarah's got a real job. Tommy's got a future. Marie came back. And you've got 47 brothers who would die for you without asking why. Stone took a long pull from his beer. "I didn't do anything special." "That's where you're wrong," Reaper said. "You did the most special thing anyone can do. You stayed. When you wanted to run, you stayed. When it would have been easier to disappear, you stayed. And you let people love you." The words hung in the air between them. "You know what the Iron Promise really means," Reaper continued. "It doesn't mean we're invincible. It doesn't mean we never lose. It means that when we promise something to each other, we keep it. We show up, we don't abandon each other, and we build something real together." Stone turned to look at his old friend. "I almost left that morning. You know that? Tommy stopped me. One small boy running through a parking lot. If he'd slept 5 more minutes, if he'd been too tired, if he'd decided it wasn't his problem, I would have ridden out of Ridgemont and we'd never have spoken again. But he didn't sleep," Reaper said. "He ran and he asked for your help, and you listened." Across the yard, Tommy was attempting to teach Miranda how to throw horseshoes. The kid was laughing, completely unself-conscious, completely free from the weight of worry that had marked his early years. He was a normal kid now. He had friends, he had security, he had a future. And it had all started because Stone had stopped running long enough to listen. As night fell and the celebration continued into the evening, Stone found himself alone for a moment near the fire pit. The flames were dancing upward in orange and gold, creating shadows that shifted and swayed. The sounds of the party continued behind him: laughter, music from someone's phone, the gentle murmur of conversation and belonging. Marie came and sat beside him on the bench without being asked. She didn't need to ask permission anymore. That's what they were learning. Sometimes the most profound intimacy comes from just existing together without explanation. "I went back to the motel yesterday," Marie said quietly. "Walked past room 112. It's been rented to a different family now. A couple with 2 kids and a dog. That room has a life in it now, separate from ours. It's moved on." Stone nodded. The motel had returned to being just a motel. The crisis had passed. Life had continued. "That's good," he said. "It means it was real," Marie continued. "It wasn't something we imagined or dreamed. We actually changed things. We were actually there in that moment where everything could have gone differently. And we chose to make it matter." Stone reached over and took Marie's hand. It was a small gesture, but it contained everything: gratitude for her return, acknowledgement of their shared history, hope for what they might build together going forward. "I never thought I'd get this," Stone said. "A second chance, not just with you, but with everything, with life, with the possibility that tomorrow could be different from yesterday." "That's what Tommy gave you," Marie said. "Not just a warning about the bike. He gave you a reason to believe that the future could be different, that choices matter, that promises can be kept." Behind them, Tommy's laughter carried across the yard. The sound was bright, uncomplicated by the weight of adult problems. A kid who'd learned that the world could be good, that there were people who would protect him, that promises meant something. The final hours of that celebration felt like a blessing. As midnight approached, the crew began to disperse. Some headed to their rooms in the clubhouse. Others mounted their motorcycles and headed out into the night, their engines carrying them toward home and families and the quiet satisfaction of a day well lived. Stone stood with Reaper in the yard, watching the last of the crew leave. "You'll stay?" Reaper asked. "In Ridgemont?" "I'll stay," Stone confirmed. "This is home." "Even when the novelty wears off?" Reaper pressed. "Even when it's just normal life and boring routine?" Stone considered the question carefully. 30 years of running had taught him that the moment ordinary life began, the moment the adrenaline faded and reality set in, that's when men like him typically bolted. That's when the ghosts became too loud and the walls felt too close, and the only answer seemed to be to get back on the bike and disappear. "Even then," Stone said finally, "because I'm learning that boring routine with people you love is better than any amount of adrenaline with people who don't. And I'm learning that a promise kept even on ordinary Tuesday afternoons is more valuable than a promise broken during the most exciting moments." Reaper smiled. He extended his hand and Stone shook it. But then Reaper pulled him into an embrace, the kind of hug that said more than words ever could. "Welcome home, brother. You're finally where you belong." When they separated, Stone saw the emotion in Reaper's eyes. His old friend was crying, not from sadness, but from the deep satisfaction of watching a broken man finally learn to heal. "I'm proud of you," Reaper said simply. Later that night, as the clubhouse quieted and people began to drift towards sleep, Stone found himself standing in the backyard again. The fire pit had died down to glowing embers. The fairy lights were still on, casting a gentle glow across the space. Tommy appeared from inside, unable to sleep, too excited about his mother's new job to rest. "Can't sleep either?" the boy asked, settling down beside Stone on the bench. "Too much happiness," Stone replied. "I'm not used to it yet. Sometimes I think I'm going to wake up and realize it's all been a dream." Tommy considered this with the seriousness of a 9-year-old who'd learned that the world didn't always feel safe. "It's not a dream," Tommy said finally, "because I remember every part of it. I remember that night I saw someone messing with your bike. I remember being scared that you were going to leave. I remember thinking that if you did, I'd done something wrong, that it was my fault." He paused. "But then you stayed, and you kept staying, and now it's real because we're all here together." Stone reached over and pulled the boy close. Tommy leaned against him, completely comfortable, completely trusting. "I want to tell you something," Stone said, "about promises. Real promises aren't about what happens in the moment. They're about what you do after the moment passes. They're about showing up on the hard days. They're about staying even when it would be easier to leave. They're about being present for someone over and over again, until they finally believe they're worth staying for." "Is that what you did for me and my mom?" Tommy asked. "That's what we did for each other," Stone corrected. "You showed me that stopping was possible. Your mom showed me that strength looks like asking for help, and I showed you both that promises from broken people can still matter." Tommy nodded. Understanding more than his years should have allowed him to understand. "Thank you," the boy said simply, "for staying." "Thank you," Stone replied, "for asking me to." As dawn broke over Ridgemont on the 7th day after the Caldwell confrontation, the Iron Promise Clubhouse was full of activity. Bikers were preparing for a run, a charity ride to raise money for underprivileged children in surrounding counties. It was something Reaper had organized, a way to put the club's strength toward a purpose beyond themselves. Stone stood in the garage, checking over his bike. The motorcycle had been repaired, fully restored, and improved. The Harley was a machine of absolute perfection now, a monument to craftsmanship and care. Marie appeared with 2 thermoses of coffee. She handed him one and kissed him on the cheek. a gesture so ordinary and so profound that it made his chest ache. "Sarah and Tommy are riding in the support vehicle," Marie reported. "Sarah wants to participate. She's feeling strong enough now." "Good," Stone said. "That's good." They stood together, watching as the crew gathered their bikes, adjusted their cuts, prepared themselves for a ride that would take them through 3 counties and connect them with 40 other motorcycle clubs, all united in the purpose of helping children who didn't have anyone else to help them. This was the Iron Promise, not the violence or the power. Though those things existed, this was what the promise really meant, the gathering together of damaged people who'd learned to heal each other, using their strength not to hurt, but to protect. Tommy came running out of the clubhouse at full speed, a small cut over his heart already packed and ready to go. He was going to ride with Stone and Marie, a place of honor usually reserved for patched members. "Are you ready?" the boy asked, bouncing with barely contained excitement. Stone looked at the kid, this small boy who'd changed his entire life with one act of courage. He looked at Marie, his old lady, his reason to try again. He looked at the Iron Promise crew, 47 strong and multiplying, united in purpose and bound by promises kept. "I'm ready," Stone said. "Let's ride." The motorcycles fired up, 47 engines roaring to life, creating a symphony of power and purpose. Stone threw his leg over his Harley, felt the familiar weight of the bike beneath him. Tommy climbed on behind, wrapping his small arms around Stone's torso. Marie mounted her own bike. She'd been part of the crew long enough to claim one of her own. Reaper gave the signal, and the Iron Promise rolled out of the parking lot together, a convoy of leather and steel, and the unshakable belief that promises, when kept, could transform the world. In the lead, Stone rode with Tommy behind him, carrying a child toward a future that had once seemed impossible. In his mirror, he could see Marie on her bike, and beyond her, 45 brothers and sisters riding as one. The road stretched ahead, empty and full of possibility, and Stone was no longer running. He was finally going home. Thank you for following Stone and Tommy's story to the end. The Iron Promise isn't just about bikers. It's about people who decide that loyalty means everything, that promises matter, and that family is something you build with the people you choose to ride beside. Subscribe to never miss a story about redemption, honesty, and the power of keeping your word. Ride safe, brothers and sisters. Until next time.